My name is Amelia Crawford, and I just turned 34 3 weeks ago. If you've ever felt the weight of being invisible in your own family, then you'll understand why I decided to do something that no one would expect. I bought a house. Not just any house, a gorgeous 3-bedroom craftsman nestled in Riverside Heights. The kind of place I dreamed of since I was little, sketching floor plans in the margins of my notebooks during middle school math class. But here's the thing, no one knew. Not my parents, not my brother James, and definitely not my younger sister Paige. The house was mine, my secret, my chance to finally have something that no one could take from me, no one could argue over. You see, I've always been the practical one, the one who worked 2 jobs to pay for community college, the one who saved every penny, the one who never asked for anything. James, my older brother, was the golden child, star quarterback, business degree from Northwestern, and now running Dad's construction company. Paige, she was the artist, the one who could do no wrong and had everything handed to her, tuition paid, a cushy life. Then there was me, always overlooked, always the afterthought. James and Paige got the support. James got a down payment gift for his house. Paige got tuition money, while I got lectures about responsibility from my parents. I learned how to keep my mouth shut and my head down. So, when I had finally saved enough for a down payment after 5 years of scrubbing teeth as a dental hygienist and running a small photography business on the side, I decided it was time to make a move, to make something that was completely mine. I found the perfect house, a beautiful craftsman with original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I could already see myself there, sitting on the swing, sipping tea in the afternoon, or reading on a cold winter's day with the fireplace crackling. I had it all planned. I got pre-approved for the mortgage without telling a soul. It was my secret, my sanctuary. The seller, Mrs. Kellerman, was thrilled. She was moving to Florida to be with her grandkids, and when I told her I was a young woman buying the house, she nearly cried. "This house needs a family again," she said, handing me the keys on closing day. "It's been waiting for the right person." I spent 3 months secretly furnishing it, piece by piece. I'd drive there after work, just to sit on the porch swing, staring at the view, imagining how it would feel to finally have a space that was all mine. I planted tulips in the front yard and hung string lights in the backyard. I even adopted a rescue cat, a ginger tabby I named Muffin, who seemed to know how special this little secret was. The plan was simple. I'd settle in quietly for a few months, then surprise my family at Christmas dinner with the big reveal. They'd all be shocked. My irresponsible little sister had bought a house on her own. It would be the perfect moment to finally stand on my own 2 feet, to show them that I wasn't just the one who did everything for everyone else. But then, life has a funny way of ruining even the best laid plans. It was a Tuesday morning in late October when everything started to unravel. I was at work cleaning Mrs. Patterson's teeth, listening to her complain about her son-in-law's eating habits, when my phone buzzed with a notification from my security camera app. Yes, I'd installed security cameras. Sue me. I'm a single woman living alone, and after binge watching too many true crime documentaries, I wasn't taking any chances. The cameras were discreet, positioned to monitor the front door, back door, and driveway. Normally, I wouldn't check them during work hours, but for some reason, today I did. I opened the app and froze. There, clear as day, was my mother, and she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was Amber, James's wife, and a blonde woman I didn't recognize. Someone in an expensive-looking coat. My blood ran cold as I watched my mother pull out a key from her purse and unlock my front door. The timestamp showed they'd been there for 7 minutes already. I could feel my pulse quicken as I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. How did Mom get a key? How did she even know about my house? And what the hell was she doing giving a tour to James's wife and a stranger? "Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry, but I have a family emergency," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "We'll need to reschedule your cleaning." I didn't even wait for her response before I dashed out of the office. My hands shook as I drove home like a woman possessed, my mind racing. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd just seen. It wasn't just a casual visit, it was a violation. When I pulled up to my house, my heart skipped a beat. The front door was slightly ajar, and I could see the signs of intrusion. Furniture had been moved. The refrigerator door was left open, but it was the note on the kitchen counter that sent me over the edge. Written in my mother's unmistakable handwriting, it read, "Amelia, honey, I know you're upset, but this is for the best. Amber and Denise, my realtor friend, think this place has real potential. We'll talk tonight. Love, Mom. P.S. Cute. I stood there for a moment, paralyzed. My mind was spinning, but the anger I felt was sharp, biting. I was furious. How could she? This wasn't just about the house. It was about everything. Every time I'd been overlooked, every time my choices had been dismissed, every time I'd been treated like I couldn't make a decision without them. I called my mom immediately. "Oh, good. You got my note," she chirped, sounding entirely too casual. "Listen, sweetie, I know you're probably confused." "Confused?" I cut in, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, how did you get a key to my house?" "Well, Mrs. Kellerman's daughter is in my book club, and when she mentioned selling to a young Hartford girl, I put two and two together. I've been worried sick about you living there alone. It's not safe for a single woman." "Mom, that's not your call to make, and the neighborhood isn't unsafe," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. She continued, oblivious to the depth of my anger. "I thought it would be good for James and Amber to take a look. You know, they might be interested in a rental property, and Denise is the best realtor in the county. I just thought I was helping, honey." I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my composure. "I never asked for your help, Mom. I didn't ask for any of this." I hung up before I could say anything else. As I stood there, staring at the empty note, my anger slowly started to morph into something else. The gut-wrenching realization that my secret, my independence, had just been taken from me. This wasn't about a house, it was about control. And I wasn't going to let them take that from me. Not anymore. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. Patients, charts, the quiet hum of the dental office around me. All I could think about was that note, the intrusion, and my mother's casual dismissal of my boundaries. My stomach churned as I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. The questions wouldn't stop swirling. How had my mother found out? Who else knew about the house? What did Amber think of me now? I hadn't even told her about the house. By the time my shift ended, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows over the streets as I drove home, the weight of the day sinking into my shoulders. I couldn't avoid it anymore. I had to face my mother. When I arrived at the house, I parked in the driveway, my eyes scanning the quiet street. The house felt different now. The front porch swing that had once been my peaceful retreat now felt like a symbol of everything I'd been hiding. I was barely inside when the phone rang. I didn't need to look at the screen to know it was her. "Amelia, I'm home now, sweetie." Mom's voice chirped through the phone, too light, too casual. "We need to talk." I pressed my thumb to the screen to answer, my breath shallow. "We're talking right now, Mom. What the hell is going on?" "Look, I know you're upset, but this is for the best. Amber and Denise think this place has real potential. You should be thanking me." I felt my chest tighten. "Potential? You brought strangers into my house, Mom. Without asking, without even telling me. I never gave you a key. I didn't want anyone in here, especially not without my permission." Her voice softened, and I could hear the discomfort laced in her words. "Sweetie, I didn't mean to upset you. You're just being sensitive. I thought it was a good opportunity, especially with you living here alone. I've been worried about you." I could feel the walls of my carefully constructed world begin to crumble. "I don't need you to worry about me, Mom. I'm not some helpless little girl anymore." "Oh, Amelia, please. This neighborhood isn't the best. You're alone, and the mortgage, well, it's a lot. I was just looking out for you. Maybe you could rent it out, or even sell it if you don't like it." My stomach twisted in knots. "No, this is my house, and I'm not selling it or renting it to anyone. This was my decision, and it was the right one." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a sigh. "Amelia, honey, I know you're frustrated, but I just wanted to help." I wasn't having it anymore. My voice hardened. "I don't need your help, Mom. I never asked for it. You don't get to make decisions for me anymore." The silence on the line was deafening. She was probably expecting me to cave, to apologize, but I wouldn't. Not this time. "I'm going to change the locks, Mom," I said quietly, a sudden resolve filling me. "And I'm not going to let you or anyone else walk through that door again without my permission." "Amelia, don't be like this," she said, her tone a mix of hurt and disbelief. "I'm done with this. You don't get to control my life anymore," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I ended the call before she could say anything more. I stood there, in the middle of my living room, surrounded by furniture I'd carefully chosen, by the home I'd worked so hard for. But now it felt like everything had changed. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about me, and the boundaries I'd failed to set. My family's overreach, my mother's disregard, and the betrayal I felt, their intrusion into what was mine, what I had created. The anger burned inside me. But it wasn't just anger, it was fear, too. Fear that I wasn't strong enough to stand up for myself, that I'd always be the one who was invisible, the one who didn't matter enough to be taken seriously. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer where I kept the spare keys, and felt my hands shake as I took them out. It was time. That night, I found a locksmith online, someone who could get there quickly. By morning, my house would be secure. No more surprises, no more intrusions. This was the first step, putting my foot down, taking control. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to end here. My family wouldn't let it go, and I would have to fight for every inch of my space, every ounce of my autonomy. The next day, I spent hours staring at the security camera footage, replaying the images of my mother, Amber, and that woman walking through my front door. The violation was clear, but something else nagged at me, something deeper. Why had Amber gone along with it? Why hadn't she stopped my mom from showing strangers my house? Amber and I hadn't exactly been close, but we had always been polite to each other. Had she known what was going on? Had she been involved? The questions echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. The answers I was looking for weren't just in my mother's actions. They were in the silence that followed. That evening, just as I was finishing my dinner, my phone rang again. This time, it was James. "Amelia, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. I didn't hesitate. "Not tonight, James. I'm busy." "We need to talk about what happened with Mom," he insisted. "I'm done talking. I don't want to hear it right now." "Amelia, please, don't shut me out." I could hear the frustration in his voice, the same way it always sounded when he didn't understand why I was upset. "James, Mom went into my house without asking. She gave strangers a tour. I don't need anyone telling me what's best for me. Not anymore." There was a long pause. I had no idea she was going to do that. Amber mentioned that she might be interested in the property, but that was all. I didn't think it was a big deal. "You didn't think it was a big deal?" I asked, incredulous. "James, this is my life, my decisions. You don't get to make them for me." "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, his voice quieter now. "I know," I replied, feeling the anger drain from me, replaced by an unfamiliar sense of exhaustion. "But I can't keep doing this. You all need to stop treating me like I don't know what's best for me." The conversation ended with no resolution, but I had made myself clear. I wasn't going to let them walk over me anymore. The next few days felt like a haze. I spent most of my time at the house, cleaning, redecorating, trying to fill the space with the comfort I had worked so hard to create. But nothing could shake the feeling of betrayal that had settled in my chest. My mother's intrusion was just the beginning. The real weight of what had happened, what I had allowed to happen, was starting to sink in. The phone calls kept coming, mostly from Mom, but also from James. I ignored them all. What was there to say? What was the point in having a conversation when the lines had already been drawn so clearly? But then, 2 days later, James showed up at my workplace. I didn't see him at first, but I heard his voice, soft, almost pleading, calling my name as I was walking back to my office after a patient. "Amelia." I froze. Turning around, I found him standing by the door to my office, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked the same, well-groomed, sharp business attire, the perfect image of my golden child older brother. But the tightness around his eyes told me something was wrong. "Not today, James," I said firmly, my voice colder than I intended. "I'm working." "I know," he replied quietly, "but we need to talk." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't think there's anything to talk about, James." "You're angry," he said, as though that was an epiphany, "and you have every right to be, but I want to explain." I crossed my arms, not willing to budge. "There's nothing to explain. You and Mom invaded my space. You gave my mother a key to my house. You didn't respect me enough to even ask me about any of this." He winced at the word invaded. "It wasn't like that, Amelia. She just wanted to help." "Help?" I repeated, the bitterness rising in my throat. "She doesn't help, James. She takes over. She's been doing it my whole life. Every decision I make is a problem. Every choice is met with her advice. I never get to make decisions for myself, not once, not until now." His face softened, the guilt plain in his eyes. "I didn't know she was going to show the house to people. Amber mentioned it once, about looking at rental properties, and I thought she was just looking into things. But I swear I had no idea she was going to take it that far. If I had, I would have stopped her." I shook my head, disbelief mixing with the anger I was trying to contain. "Do you honestly think I'd believe that, James? You had no idea? She went into my house with a key and gave a tour to potential renters. You didn't think that was crossing a line?" "I didn't know she had a key," he said softly, almost apologetically. I know this looks bad, but I swear I wasn't part of it. You're my sister, Amelia. I care about you. The words felt hollow, like an old, faded apology that had been used too many times before. I looked at him, searching his face for any sign that he truly understood what had happened, what he'd allowed to happen. You know what, James? I said, my voice calm but firm. I don't need to hear that from you anymore. You say you care, but you never respected me. Not the way I needed, not the way I've had to fight to make you see me. Maybe that's why I've been so angry. He opened his mouth to say something else, but I cut him off. You've never once respected my decisions. You just think I don't know what I'm doing. I don't need your advice. I didn't need Mom's either. He looked like he was about to protest, but then his shoulders slumped and he gave me a resigned look. I know, he muttered. I know, but I'm still your brother, and I still care about you. Maybe I don't show it the right way, but I'm trying. I stared at him for a moment, feeling a strange combination of exhaustion and relief. The confrontation had been hard, but it was necessary. It had been years since I'd spoken to James like that, with that much raw honesty. James, I said, softer now. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm not asking for anyone's approval. I'm doing this for me. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that's just mine. I bought this house because I want it. I'm going to keep it because I deserve it. I get it, he said, nodding slowly. I do. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't, like you didn't have the right to make your own choices. It wasn't an apology I had expected, but it was the first real one he had ever given me. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. I gave him a tight smile. Thanks, James, but I'm still changing the locks. And if you or anyone else shows up here without asking first, I'll call the police. No more surprises. He looked like he was about to argue, but then he just sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, he said with a weary smile. You're not going to let us forget this, are you? Nope, I said, shaking my head with a hint of humor. Not for a long time. That evening, I sat down to think. The phone calls had stopped for now, and the weight of the day was finally starting to sink in. The walls I had built around myself were starting to come down, piece by piece, but it didn't feel as bad as I'd expected. For the first time, I wasn't alone. I had stood up for myself, and even though it was hard, I was beginning to feel something like relief. As I sat on the couch, Muffin curled up beside me, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to take control of my life. But it wasn't over yet. The hardest part was still ahead. The days after my confrontation with James were quieter than I expected. It was almost as though the whole family had collectively decided to give me space to breathe, something I hadn't realized I needed until it was there. But then, just when I thought the storm had passed, it hit me. Amber. It wasn't like her to be silent for so long. We'd never been close, but Amber and I had always managed polite conversation at family gatherings. We had our differences, sure, but I never imagined she would get caught up in this mess. So when she reached out to me, I wasn't sure what to expect. The call came early one afternoon. I was in the middle of painting the guest bedroom, a soft lavender that felt soothing against the white walls, and my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Amber. I hesitated for a moment. Should I answer? Was this just another attempt to smooth things over? Or was she about to make this whole situation even worse? I swiped the screen to accept the call. Hello, I said, my tone cautious. Amelia? Amber's voice was quieter than usual, no sign of her usual bubbly energy. I need to apologize. I owe you a big one. I stood there, the paintbrush frozen in my hand. Apologize for what, exactly? Everything, she said. I should have been upfront with you, and I wasn't. And for that, I'm sorry. The apology wasn't what I expected. In fact, it left me slightly off balance. I hadn't thought about Amber as someone who would ever apologize for anything, let alone this. Amber, I stopped myself. What exactly are you apologizing for? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, with a deep breath, she said, James and we've been having problems, financial problems. And when your mom mentioned that you had bought a house, I panicked. I thought maybe you'd be open to renting it out, or maybe even letting us house sit. I felt a sudden sinking feeling in my stomach. You thought what? That I'd just hand over my house without asking? It's not like that, I swear, she said quickly. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. I didn't know what Mom was doing. She just kept pushing. But I should have known better. I should have asked you directly. I blinked, trying to process the words. So, you knew? You knew what Mom was doing? You were okay with her showing my house to strangers? No, no, she rushed to explain. I didn't know she was going to break in with a realtor. When James told me, I felt sick. This whole mess is my fault. The weight of the conversation sank in. I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. The betrayal I'd felt toward James suddenly felt like it wasn't entirely his fault. Amber had been part of it too, even if she hadn't been the one to show up at my house uninvited. Why didn't James just ask me for help? I asked quietly. Amber sighed heavily on the other end. Pride, I guess. He's always been the successful one, the one who's got it all figured out. Asking for help? That's not something he's good at. It's not easy for him to admit when things aren't going well. I let the silence stretch between us for a moment, absorbing the revelation. James, the golden boy, wasn't so golden after all. My brother, the one who always seemed to have it together, had been hiding cracks in his perfect facade. He wasn't immune to struggles, and somehow that made me feel both angered and oddly relieved. I don't know what to say to you, Amber, I said, my voice a mixture of frustration and understanding. I'm not your backup plan. I didn't buy this house to solve anyone else's problems. I bought it for myself. I know, she replied, her voice filled with regret, and I'm sorry for trying to take advantage of that. I should have asked you first. I shouldn't have put you in this position. For the first time, I felt like Amber was actually seeing me, truly seeing me, not just as James's little sister or someone to manipulate for her own gain. It was a small victory, but it mattered. It's going to take a lot for me to trust you again, Amber, I said, my voice steady but firm, but I appreciate you being honest with me, for once. I get it, she said, her voice softening, and I'm truly sorry, Amelia, for everything. We ended the conversation with an unspoken understanding. Amber wasn't perfect, and neither was I. But we'd both made mistakes, and maybe, just maybe, we were starting to understand each other. The next few days were quieter. Amber didn't call again, and my phone remained silent. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a pause, like the air clearing after a storm. I spent the time in my house, making small adjustments, adding personal touches to the walls, and continuing to create the space I'd worked so hard to call my own. But that night, something unexpected happened. I received a text message from James. Thanks for dinner. The house is amazing. You did good, sis. I stared at the message, my heart fluttering slightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The walls between us had cracked, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were finally speaking the same language. The tension of the past weeks, the battles, the misunderstandings, maybe they weren't gone, but they had shifted. And with that shift came a strange kind of peace. Maybe this family thing wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that, for now, was enough. The following weekend, I made a decision I hadn't thought possible just days before. I invited everyone over for dinner. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. The broken pieces of my family weren't going to heal if we kept avoiding the hard conversations. I needed to show them I was strong enough to stand on my own, but that I was also willing to give them a chance to make things right. The invitation went out early Saturday morning. Family dinner at my place on Sunday at 6 o'clock. Dress casual. I'm cooking. I didn't expect them to show up without hesitation. I didn't expect it to be easy, but I did expect it to be real. Sunday arrived too quickly. I spent the morning preparing, my hands moving instinctively through the motions of chopping vegetables and stirring sauces. But underneath the surface of it all, I was nervous. I hadn't seen my family all together in weeks, and this dinner felt like more than just a meal. It was a reckoning. I set the table carefully, placing the plates and silverware just so, making sure the wine glasses caught the light. The house had never looked more like home. The warm glow from the kitchen and the flickering of the candles on the table made everything feel intimate, even if the tension hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. By 6 o'clock, I heard the familiar rumble of Dad's old truck pulling into the driveway. The first to arrive were James and Amber, the couple who had caused so much trouble just weeks ago. Their presence felt strange, like the calm after the storm, but you weren't sure if the storm was really over. Paige arrived last, her beat-up Subaru pulling in with a jolt, her messy bun escaping strands of curly hair. She was the most distant from this whole mess, yet I could see the quiet curiosity in her eyes when she stepped out of the car. I had kept her out of the drama as much as I could, but the tension between us was palpable. She might not have been part of the chaos, but she wasn't immune to it either. I opened the door before they could knock. "Welcome to my home," I said, forcing a smile. "The tour I give them will be nothing like the unauthorized one Mom had conducted," I added, trying to make light of the situation. They stepped inside, looking around in awe. I could see the mixture of surprise and admiration on their faces. This wasn't just a house, it was a declaration. Really nice place, Dad started, his voice gruff but sincere, running a hand along the restored mantelpiece. He looked at the room as if seeing it through the eyes of someone who built things for a living. Gorgeous. I can't believe you did all this yourself, Paige added, her voice tinged with disbelief as she looked around. This is incredible. I know, right? I said, feeling the pride bubble inside me. This is what I've been working for. I saved for it. I researched the market. I took the time to pick the right place. Amber stepped forward, holding a bottle of wine like a peace offering. I brought this, she said with a small smile, one I hadn't expected. I hope it's okay. I nodded, my smile softening. It's perfect. The table was set, and the family fell into place. I had spent hours cooking lasagna, garlic bread, and a salad made from the vegetables I'd grown in my backyard. For a moment, everything felt normal. But I knew that wasn't entirely true. Nothing was the same anymore. The family that sat around this table wasn't the one I had grown up with. We began to eat in silence, the clinking of forks and glasses filling the gaps. The warmth of the food and the wine started to loosen us up a bit. It felt like we were all holding our breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation to begin. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. Amelia, she started, looking down at her plate, we need to talk. I could feel the heaviness of her words hanging over the table. Everyone fell silent, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation. But I knew it had to happen. Look, Mom continued, her voice quieter now. I know I've made mistakes, and I know I hurt you. But I just want you to know I was only trying to help. You're my daughter, and I worry about you. I've always worried. I swallowed, trying to keep my composure. Mom, I know you were trying to help, but you didn't trust me to make my own decisions. You crossed a line. You broke into my house. Her eyes filled with tears. I never meant for it to go that far, she whispered. But when you didn't tell us about the house, I was scared. You were so quiet, so secretive, and I thought maybe you were in over your head. I didn't want you to make a mistake. I looked at her, the rawness of her emotions hitting me. Mom, I'm not a child anymore. I'm 34 years old. I can make my own decisions. I know, she said, wiping her eyes. But I guess I was still trying to protect you. From what? I don't know. I just wanted to help you. I took a deep breath, my heart softening a little. I don't need you to protect me, Mom. I need you to trust me, to respect my choices, even if they're not what you would have chosen. The room was still, the silence weighing heavily on all of us. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact. But there was something different in his expression, a flicker of understanding, maybe even regret. I owe you an apology, too, Amber spoke up suddenly, her voice uncharacteristically serious. She met my gaze, her eyes full of sincerity. About everything. I shouldn't have put you in this position. I shouldn't have gone along with what Mom was doing. My stomach twisted, and I found myself searching her face for any hint of truth. Amber, I said slowly, why didn't you just ask me for help? She looked down at her plate, clearly struggling with the weight of her confession. Because I didn't think you would. We were struggling. James didn't want to admit it, and I don't know what I was thinking. I panicked. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the confession. There was a vulnerability in Amber's voice that I had never heard before, a crack in the perfect, shiny image I'd always had of her. James is too proud to ask for help, she continued, her voice cracking. I thought if we could just get a break, it would be easier, but I shouldn't have involved you in that. I'm sorry. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was the first one I had ever heard from Amber. It wasn't just words. It was a crack in the armor that had protected our family's secrets for so long. I'm not little anymore, Amber, I said quietly. I'm not just James's little sister, and I won't be treated like I am. She nodded, her expression softening. I know, and I'm sorry. We ate the rest of the meal in a quiet, almost peaceful silence. The tension wasn't entirely gone, but it was different now. It wasn't a war. It was a family, imperfect and complicated, but still together. For the first time in years, I felt like we could work through this. When dinner was over, I stood to clear the plates, feeling a strange sense of calm. Maybe the road to healing was longer than I had hoped, but at least it had started. As they left that night, I stood in the doorway, watching the taillights of their cars fade into the night. Mom gave me a tight hug, her voice low in my ear as she whispered, I'm proud of you. I nodded, the weight of everything finally starting to lift. I had done it. I had fought for my space, for my boundaries, for my independence. And in the process, I had started to rebuild my family. The days that followed the family dinner were oddly peaceful. The tension that had hovered like a dark cloud for so long seemed to dissipate, and though it wasn't perfect, it felt like we were all finally breathing again. There were still moments of awkwardness, those lingering silences when we weren't sure what to say to each other. But they were brief, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. As I stood in my kitchen one evening, looking out the window at the soft glow of the streetlights, I realized something had shifted in me too. The woman who had walked into that dinner wasn't the same one who was standing there now. I had been afraid of what it would mean to stand up for myself, to truly assert my boundaries. I had feared losing my family, feared that standing firm would tear us apart, but instead it had brought us closer. In a strange way, I had started to understand that it wasn't just about the house. It was about me, finding my own voice, reclaiming my space, and not apologizing for it. The phone buzzed on the counter, and I saw Amber's name light up the screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? Hey, Amelia, she said softly. I just wanted to thank you again, for dinner, for everything. It meant more to me than I can say. I leaned against the counter, smiling faintly. It wasn't just dinner, Amber. It was a chance for us to finally talk, to be honest. I know, she said quietly. I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't think I've ever really seen you for who you are. You've always been the quiet one, the one who doesn't make waves. But that night, I realized just how strong you really are. I felt my chest tighten, emotions rushing through me. Amber had always seen me as the background player, the invisible one, the little sister who never made a fuss. But now she was finally seeing me, really seeing me. Thank you, I said, my voice catching. I needed to hear that. There was a pause before Amber spoke again, this time with a hint of hesitation. You know, I've been thinking. If you ever want to talk more about anything, I'm here. It wasn't much, but it was enough. We had never been close, but maybe we didn't need to be best friends. Maybe we just needed to be honest with each other. Maybe we just needed to let go of the walls we had built between us. I appreciate that, I said softly. Maybe we could start with just a coffee sometime. No pressure. Yeah, Amber replied, her voice warmer now. I'd like that. We could both use a little less pressure in our lives. I smiled, feeling a quiet sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to carry the weight of my family's expectations alone. Later that evening, I sat on the porch swing at my house, the gentle rocking soothing my restless thoughts. The air was cool, the sky a canvas of deep blues and purples, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right. As the soft breeze whispered through the trees, I thought about the journey I had been on. It hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over. But I had finally learned to stand on my own 2 feet, to make decisions that were best for me, and to trust myself in ways I had never dared before. I had fought for my independence, for the space I had created, and I had won. But more than that, I had learned that sometimes independence doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the people you love. It means setting boundaries, asserting your worth, and letting others see you for who you truly are. The family I had once feared losing, I had found a way to reconnect with, but this time it was on my terms, and I was finally okay with that. As I looked out into the distance, a sense of calm settled over me. I wasn't just in this house to escape my past or prove a point. I was here to build something new, and with each passing day, I could feel the pieces falling into place. I was still standing in the doorway when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from James. Thanks for dinner. The house is amazing. You did good, sis. I smiled, a warmth spreading through my chest. For the first time, I felt like I was truly part of something real and true. Not just the house I had built, but the family I was learning to rebuild, piece by piece.